Sup nerds, I'm CuppaJoey and welcome back to another episode of r/Am I the Fart Duck? I can't say the actual words, so I thought I'd zhuzh it up a little bit this episode. So this one was originally posted on r/Choosing Beggars, which I guess is not surprising that they were voted to be the butt wipe in this situation. But I thought it would be more appropriate for this video because hey, it was originally posted on r/Am I the A, so here we go. Am I the butt wipe for asking my staff to work for free to raise money for the company for which they've been laid off? I am the artistic director for a small dinner theatre company which is privately owned and operated. I have worked for this company for almost 25 years, coming back in between contracts. I'm a performer as well, having been on Broadway. Because of the pandemic, we have been unable to put on our season. We had to lay off all of the staff performers, who are also the servers, kitchen staff, front of house staff, even myself, the operations manager and general manager. The owners told me that the business was on the verge of collapse, even with the available government funding, that they needed an injection of cash to get through the next few months. I sent an email to all of my staff, performers/servers, letting them know that the owners were in dire financial straits because of the pandemic. In my email, I suggested we all volunteer our time and talent and put on a virtual talent show to raise money with a GoFundMe for the owners. I received some really strong feedback from some of the performers that they did not want to participate. Also, the company received negative feedback regarding where the donations would go, seeing as this company is not a registered charity. Some members of the public were strongly against the money going towards the owners and instead be split among the out-of-work staff. Am I the butt for coming up with this idea and asking my staff to do it? Yes you are. Nobody should have to volunteer their time and their talent and their effort, especially if they have just been sacked. You can't sack someone saying we haven't got enough money, but would you come back and do a bit of extra work for free? And yeah, the fact that the owners were thinking, oh, we should get all of the former staff to volunteer their time to raise money for us. If you own a theatre company, then you have more than enough money to get by during a pandemic. Sure, you're not going to have an income for a while, but you know, these people usually have a hell of a lot in assets. It's not like their quality of life is going to be severely damaged if they, lose out money for a certain amount of time. However, the quality of life of the performers could seriously be damaged if they're not receiving money for their work. And a lot of them may be doing in-house virtual gigs, as a lot of performers have been doing during the pandemic. But yes, sacking someone and then expecting them to work for free, and the fact that they were like, well, I lost my job too when they were the director and have been working for 25 years on and off of Broadway. You've all got way more money. You should pay your staff. They are the ones that are putting in the effort to make the money. It's their labor. You can't force labor. That's that's a form of modern day slavery in a way. I mean, I know that it would be voluntary, but no, it's still wrong. You can't expect that kind of free labor. One thing I did take from this that's really positive though is the fact that the general public is just not taking any crap on this. The fact that they said that a lot of people have come forward and said, why is the money going towards the performers? That's great, and this is going to be really bad for their PR as well, because now they're just going to be known as a theatre company that takes advantage of their workers. Now for this one, I'm going to have to use a lot of alternative words due to what YouTube is like, as you can imagine if you've read the title already. Am I the bad guy for asking my parents to read a piece I wrote, not warning them that it involves very sexual graphic depictions of mouth-on-vajingo sex? There's two things you need to know about me. I'm a 24-year-old man and I love eating vajingo. Seriously, it's my favourite thing, and unlike most males, I don't have much interest in BJs or even sex. I'm also a writer, and I realise I should stop trying to write the next great American novel and just write what I know. So I wrote a non-fiction, but flowery, I'd say, piece about eating clam. It's not pee, it's modern day Anais Nin type intellectual sexual content. It's also very feminist because there are men out there, nay, boys, who still have childish hang-ups about French kissing a woman's delicate rose. Apologies for my various euphemisms, like I said, I'm a writer. My parents aren't even conservative, but they got really uncomfortable after I had them read my piece. My mum said it was a bit too much for her. I asked her which part, and she said all of it, but specifically pointed to a line, copy-paste. I slither my tongue through her sumptuous flaps, lapping up her golden honey with fervour as I feel her stiffening turtle's head poke into my nostril. She and my dad have always been supportive of my writing, but they said this was private and they'd rather not meet any more stuff about my sex life. I have to admit, I'm a little offended because this is my art and I also believe this is the piece that might actually be something. My dad draws in his free time and this includes nude portraits of people we don't even know, so how is that okay but my writing isn't? Alas, the perils of being in a family of creatives, lol. Anyway, who's in the wrong? This is one of those situations where if I wasn't sitting down, I would need to sit down. Also, I know that I often talk about what was said in the comments. I give a little bit of backstory saying, well, in the comments they said this, they said that. However, for this one, I thought I'd actually read some out because they're brilliant, and then I'll go on to my commentary. It's non-fiction, so you asked your parents to read a story about your sexual acts? That's, yeah, too much. Yes, it's non-fiction. I have licked upwards of 8 vulvas, but I kind of stirred them into one for the story's sake. Upwards of 8 vulvas? Oh, bless your heart. As a woman, everything about this made me sick to my stomach. Gross. YTA, as in, you're the fart duck. It's okay if you think I am the fart duck, but I think you need to work on comfort with your own body because it's a glorious thing. Take care. YTA, no one should ever have their parent read something about their sexual life, and the fact you told them it was non-fiction just made it worse. That's fair, but like, they had me because they had sex, so every time I look at them I have to picture their sex life. Family in general is a sexual thing. I assure you, family is not a sexual thing. If that's your first thought when you see your parents, it's not exactly normal. And then we got a little bit of writing advice. Oh, I'm happy to workshop this sentence. If your writing sounds like you have a thesaurus in your hand, it needs work. Every word here could be simplified, and the sentence could be simplified. You also want to use a metaphor to convey something complex in a simple and eloquent way. Randomly describing a body part as a turtle isn't exactly a metaphor, you're just calling something a weird name. Thank you, how's this instead? I slither my tongue through her sumptuous flaps, lapping up her golden honey with fervour as I feel her thighs quivering, my saliva swirling with her sweet juices in the mixture. As the mixture cascades down her taint in a waterfall of sexuality. You're getting closer. Here's what I recommend. Delete the word sumptuous, then delete all of the other words and throw your computer in the river. And then this one, which just owns him in the best way possible. Writer, meet freelance editor. I'm going to suspend my disbelief for a moment and pretend you're not just trolling. Again, I don't know if this person's just trolling. The fact that they were so defensive about it makes me think that they might not have been. Which, you know, is a lot worse than a troll, but yeah, let's move on anyway. First of all, I get that you're producing written work, but let's not elevate it to the level of art. From the way you've constructed your replies in the first few sentences you've cited here, there's no art going on. I think the word you're looking for is medium. I have read almost the entirety of Ansai Snin's work. I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I do know that they were like one of the first erotica novelists back in the day, like back in I think the 19th century. I've not read any of the stuff because, to be completely honest, I'm not really interested in erotica at all. But I'm familiar with the name in that context. Okay. Nothing you've shared here approaches the quality and magnitude of her erotica. If you're interested in reading work in the style of Anais Nin, I would refer you to the stories of Carmen Maria Machado, particularly The Husband's Stitch. I think you made a bad choice asking your parents to read your story. I also believe that if your work were well written or had any other redeeming quality, your parents would not have been so offended. Artistic merit is a thing. I get that you've licked upwards of 9 vulvas and you're proud of that. Congratulations, I've eaten Vajingo for over 40 years now and I still feel passionately about it. What I don't do is inflict the written equivalent of I just had sex song upon my nearest and dearest. Hence, YTA. Editorial note, you describe your prose as flowery. I would say rather it seems to be 1 part cringe and 3 parts sickly. If I didn't already have diabetes, I've had it now. It's also clear that you're reaching with your vocabulary. Your sentences are constructed awkwardly and your descriptions are immature and amateurish. I would suggest trying to find a more natural or realistic style, pare down your adjectives, and drop your affectations about clam nomming. I had to read out some of those comments because one, they were freaking hilarious, and also, especially in regards to those that write erotica, they're going to have a better idea as to what's technically wrong with his writing than I do. Now, I do actually enjoy creative writing myself as a hobby, although I usually do fantasy and sci-fi. The fact that this guy thinks that he's an amazing writer and presents this really cringy piece of writing as his magnum opus is just so terrible. We've only seen one sentence and it reads so badly. Now, I don't know if this guy genuinely wants to know if he's the fart duck in this situation. I think, and I'm not kidding with this, I don't think that they're a troll. I do think that they're real. I think that they wrote this and genuinely think that what they wrote was beautiful. But I think that they were doing it in, like, an attempt to please women on the internet, that they thought that if they write this piece of erotica, that they were going to be like, oh yeah, all the girls are going to be coming into my DMs, dropping the panties, being like, nom on my turtle head. Oh, also, I need to talk about the use of the word turtle head, because I don't know about anyone else, but for me, turtle head is like, it's when you've started to poo yourself. So it's like a little bit of poo just coming out of the bum, which is why it's turtle heading. And so when he was talking about her turtle head in his nostril, I was like, Okay, so let's set aside a minute. We know that this guy is writing terribly. We know that this guy is basically the writing equivalent of r/I have sex. And yeah, when he was like compared to the I Had Sex song, at least that is, you know, comedy. It's not supposed to be taken seriously. So, you know, that's got a lot more artistic value than this because it's humorous. But this, okay, I'm gonna be blunt as to what he did. This guy has just been incredibly open about sexually harassing his own parents. The fact that he said that when he looks at his parents, he inherently sees something sexual because they had to do that to make him, that is seriously disturbing. I think for most people, like, you never want to imagine that happened. You know it happened, but you just kind of like block it out and pretend it did, and nobody wants to know that. I remember once my father being very, like, blunt with me and like, saying, just like you're grossed out by the thought of me having sex, I'm really grossed out by the thought of you having sex. Which is how it should be. There should be that level of, oh, I don't want to know that when it comes to family. So the fact that he's looking at his parents with a sexual light is, yeah, it's really hinting to me that this guy has some unresolved sexual issues and may even be a sex offender. And I do think that there is some sexual offender kind of behaviour going on here, which I'll address in a second. One of the issues that I have is that he spoke about his father doing life art and doing, you know, drawings of naked people, which, you know, is very normal. My partner is an artist and she has watched sort of like this live thing that was on the BBC recently about life drawing, where they would have, you know, a nude model who would then be drawn and then they would show the different techniques. There's also nothing inherently sexual about nudity. You know, the human body is just a human body, and not having clothes doesn't automatically make it a sexual situation. If you think about when you're like in the bath with your leg over the side of the tub, like awkwardly trying to cut your toenails, that's a situation where you're nude, but it's not sexual, you know. But onto what I think is seriously concerning about his behaviour. He never warns them about the fact that it was describing very sexual pieces, like very, very sexual acts. And then seems to have an issue with the fact that they're uncomfortable with it. It's totally fine to anybody for anybody to feel uncomfortable about any sexual situation. Nobody should inherently feel comfortable with putting themselves in a sexual situation, especially if they weren't expecting it, and especially by your own freaking family member. The fact that he dared to say that this was feminist, my god. So we're gonna like go back a little bit to how I said that I thought that this post was mainly so that he could try and impress women on the internet with his, you know, clam slobbering skills. Like, the fact that he goes on about how he's not remotely interested in BJs, but he likes the idea of going down on a woman, you know, that was clearly meant for, like, someone to go, oh my goodness, he'll go down on me and I don't need to do that, which is what he imagined. You imagine, like, all the panties would just be on the floor. But he forced his parents to read something sexual. He forced his parents into a sexual situation that they did not consent to, and said that it is normal because family is a sexual thing, which definitely isn't. This is pretty much the same as sending somebody an unsolicited dick pic, or, you know, flashing in public, forcing somebody to look at adult videos without their consent. Basically, this is sexual harassment. He has openly sexually harassed his own parents, and for some reason he's proud of that. This is the behaviour of a sex offender. This is very disturbing. It's really concerning, and I hope that this behaviour gets nipped in the bud as soon as possible. I do think that this person needs psychiatric help if this is how they're viewing family and consent. And yeah, the fact that he actually said that what he did was feminist while being open about sexually harassing his own parents, this is really horrible stuff. Would I be the baddie if I tell my friends they gave an inappropriate gift? I recently got a postgraduate degree and had a socially distanced picnic to celebrate. To my surprise, more than a handful of people brought gifts and cards. I'm grateful. I was also quite surprised by the fact that more than one person gave me alcohol or referenced buying me a celebratory drink once bars reopen. I'm a sober alcoholic, and part of my recovery process was being quite open with my friends and family about the way that I identify. I know everyone's journey is different, but for me personally, publicly claiming sobriety was an essential part of me finally being able to stop relapsing. I have some people-pleasing tendencies and have always saved my really self-destructive behaviour for behind closed doors, so the only people who've witnessed my rock-bottom behaviour are intimate partners, family, and therapists. And since I'm such a people pleaser, before I made a big deal about being in recovery, people would ask me out to bars a lot, and it was tricky for me to resist temptation. I could go into a lot of story about this, but please just take my word for it. I'm not someone who can moderate alcohol use, and it's better for me to abstain. On the one hand, I'm grateful that my self-destructive tendencies weren't reputation damaging, and people in my life seem to see me as super normal. On the other hand, I've really benefited from my sober status not being a secret, and especially as recent stressors have come up, I don't entirely trust myself to be alone with a fancy bottle of champagne. I'd also like to be known by my friends, and overcoming addiction is an important part of my history. I didn't really want to make a big thing of it at the public, so I just smiled and set things aside, but I'd really like to privately let a couple of people know that while I appreciated their unexpected gifts and their thoughtfulness, I'm not ever going to be a drinker again. This wasn't a phase or a break, I'm an alcoholic. On the other hand, I can see how that would come across as unnecessary and rude. They were just trying to do something nice and I could re-gift the bottle, so having a conversation to specifically let them know they gave me a difficult gift will probably feel awkward and confronting for them. Anyways, would I be the baddie if I call some friends to let them know to never buy me booze again? I want to start this off by saying a massive congratulations to OP. Becoming sober is definitely not an easy process. Overcoming addiction is really difficult, and yeah, that's the issue with alcohol, is that once you are an alcoholic, you can't not be an alcoholic. It's one of those things where you can't just wait 10 years and then you can have one glass of wine and be fine. You just have to abstain and that's it for the rest of your life. So the fact that they have not only got sober, but they've got a postgraduate degree, that is absolutely fantastic, and they should feel really proud of themselves. Because this is a massive journey and they've come along a long way. Now, on to the friends. I think that the friends were being really inconsiderate in this situation. If your friend tells you that they are a sober alcoholic, that they are somebody who has had issues with addiction and alcohol and just completely wants to abstain. Because this is the thing, is that they said that it was a very public, very open thing that they needed to come out about, the kind of situation that they're in. Would be one thing if their recovery was something incredibly private and they didn't tell people about that, because that would totally be legit as well. If you need to be open or private about it, it totally depends on each individual. So if they were private about it, then the friends might not have known, but the fact that they were very clear and open about it and said this is the situation, they should know not to give that kind of drink. Also, if you did want to give a drink just because you felt weird not giving a bottle for whatever societal pressure reasons, there are things like Schlur, the adult soft drink. I don't know how appropriate this would be to alcoholics. I don't know if this may make temptation even worse, so, this may be complete bollocks I'm talking. But, you can always give a box of chocolates or something like that. Or even, like they said, gift cards, or there's also experiences. Experiences are often popular gifts now because we've all got too much crap in our life. So if we can have a card to say that we can have a day out, that's going to mean a lot more. Buying the OP alcohol was incredibly inappropriate of all of their friends, and really their friends need to be far more aware of these things. This isn't the kind of thing that you can just easily forget, especially when alcohol is incredibly self-destructive when it gets to addiction levels. I think that they need to be clear and open because they have done so well to be sober for this long, and the last thing they need is more temptation, especially as they said while we're all in lockdown and have a lot of stress going on. Absolutely, they wouldn't be, by any means wrong for telling their friends that they're not comfortable with accepting these kind of gifts in the future. It's probably going to be the case that their friends forgot and feel really embarrassed when it comes out. But if they are offended for whatever reason, then throw that friend out, they're not worth it. Well, that's it for this episode of r/Am I the Fart Duck? I would say which do you think is the worst, but oh my goodness, after reading all of that, I think we all freaking know. As always, if you enjoyed hearing from this subreddit or would like to hear from any other subreddit, then do let me know in the comments, and until then, I'll see you all next time.